Cool. Well, hey, I'm Tejas from Hightouch, and today we're going to be talking about reverse ETL and how to put your warehouse to work for more than analytics. So I'm Tejas, one of the founders of Hightouch, and joining me today will also be Ash from My Muscle Chef, who manages data and insights over there. And today what we're going to be discussing is, first off, what's reverse ETL? It's a buzzword that's really picking up in the data space and data infrastructure, data engineering, data analytics, and why is it taking off? What does it really do? Then we're going to talk about why your data warehouse should be your CDP or customer data platform. And then Ash is actually going to give a demo, a pre-recorded demo on how My Muscle Chef, a leading consumer brand in Australia, is actually powering their whole marketing stack with the data warehouse. So first off, what's reverse ETL? Reverse ETL is really about the last mile of analytics, so making data actionable. As you can see in a typical modern data stack, you have solutions like Fivetran or even a Snowplow, taking data, putting it into the data warehouse, event data and object data respectively. Inside the data warehouse, you might have solutions like dbt actually transforming that data into best-of-class models. So you might have dbt making a model in the warehouse for what's a customer, what are they doing in your app, what's their revenue, what's the risk of churning. And then the most typical way to use that data in the data warehouse is actually to just use it to power business intelligence. So you can build reports in tools like Looker or tools like Mode or tools like Tableau to actually show that information to your different business stakeholders around a company, to be able to plot it, draw graphs, build tables, anything like that. And what we're proposing with reverse ETL is actually a new way to surface information from the data warehouse. So instead of just using reports, the idea behind reverse ETL is that you can actually take that data and move it to the systems that business teams are using across your company, whether that's a CRM on the sales side, an ad platform on the marketing side, or even a platform like Marketo or Gainsight. So to zoom out a bit, ETL and ELT basically move data from data sources like Salesforce, Google Ads, Marketo, you name it, into the data warehouse. This is a pretty mature market with players like Fivetran leading the space. And reverse ETL is what we focus on at Hightouch, which is basically a SaaS service to help you move model data, so from your data warehouse back into SaaS tools. And typically here, you're going to be moving model data, so not raw data, but actually data that is a more higher level definition of what a customer is, some key attributes about them, and things like that. And you'll be taking this data and actually just putting it into systems that are already used around the company. So first off, we've covered what reverse ETL is and what it actually means. Now we want to talk about this idea of a CDP, because there's a lot of people talking about using reverse ETL to turn their data warehouse into a CDP. So a CDP is a customer data platform, and it's another buzzword that's taking off, but more so than in the data space, it's more taking off in the marketing space. And basically, all consumer companies are looking for a CDP of some sort. And if you really ask me what a CDP really is, it's basically a database that holds all your customer information, has some sort of point-and-click UI that allows you to transform it and build it into a model that makes sense for your company, and then has a sort of activation layer to help you move that data to different systems around the company. And a lot of companies have been buying these off-the-shelf CDPs like Segment or mParticle or ActionIQ. And really what we're proposing at Hightouch is to use your warehouse as a CDP instead. So we'll dive a bit into why this approach is taking off for reverse ETL and kind of turning your warehouse into a CDP versus off-the-shelf solutions like Segment. For some context and background, I actually used to work at Segment. I was an early engineer there, one of the earliest engineers of the company, and helped them build a number of their products, including their kind of CDP offering for marketers to come in and turn Segment not just into like a bus of data around your company, but also a source of truth for all your customer information and allow you to move it to different places like Facebook ads, Google ads, etc. And that's actually where we got the idea for Hightouch. And there are a couple problems we noticed at Segment that actually made us realize that the data warehouse should be your CDP, not some sort of proprietary off-the-shelf platform. So first, what we realized was that CDPs aren't really the single source of truth. if you adopt a new platform like an off-the-shelf CDP, like a Segment or mParticle, you start to realize quickly that it doesn't have all the data you need. Even if you implement something like Segment's Analytics.js library on your website or the equivalent on your mobile app, or send a few events to it here and there, it doesn't have all the data because the rest of your company and the rest of the ecosystem, when you think about players like Fivetran, Snowplow, etc., are really investing in the CDP as a data warehouse as a source of truth. All these solutions kind of write into the data warehouse, and few of these solutions actually can natively write into a CDP solution. So more and more, we started realizing that at companies above a certain size, the data warehouse was the only place where companies really had all their data, and that CDPs only had a partial view of the world. The next thing that we realized was that CDPs require you to track all your data and events in kind of their own format. And in a large company, like the enterprises we work with, like Autotrader, for example, this can take months and months to implement just for part of the organization. And as you add more features, it takes more time to implement and implement again. Whereas if you're using your data warehouse as kind of the CDP, or turning your data warehouse into the CDP with a solution like Hightouch, you can actually get going right away. As soon as data is in your warehouse, whether it's from Fivetran, Snowplow, custom ETL pipes you've written in-house, it can immediately be used inside of Hightouch to move it to different systems across ad platforms, marketing platforms, sales platforms, and you don't have to do any extra steps. The next couple points are pretty straightforward. Given that CDPs are proprietary software and not really and kind of try to run a data warehouse of themselves, you can't really use solutions like DBT on top. You can't really orchestrate them with solutions like Airflow. You can't visualize the data inside of them in solutions like Looker. And they don't really mesh with the way data teams operate and kind of the best of breed modern data stack. Our theory at Hightouch is that marketing and data teams should be able to work together, and we think with the right solution on top, the data warehouse can still be a platform where that's possible. The last thing is that CDPs aren't so flexible. You're kind of locked into their own data model. They don't really support you to have your own custom objects that make sense for your company, like a products collection. And they don't really benefit from everything that's happening and all the innovation that's happening in the data ecosystem, like many of the technologies that have been covered today at this conference. So the first thing we provide at Hightouch is really just the ability to use the process of reverse ETL to take any data from the data warehouse, basically write a SQL query and map it to any system. So you can say, I want this data from data warehouse to show up in Salesforce, or I want this data warehouse to populate this custom audience in Facebook, or I want this table in the data warehouse to show up as this table inside of NetSuite. But what we've also built at Hightouch and launched recently is this product called Audiences, which basically is under the theory that this capability of reverse ETL should be accessible to more and more people around a company, and particularly marketers. There's a super common workflow we noticed amongst many of our customers, like My Muscle Chef, where marketers were telling data people to change a SQL query and create a new sync in Hightouch. And as a result, we actually built an audience builder that looks very much like the type of audience builder you'd see inside of a product, instead of a CDP product like Segment or mParticle, but it sits directly on top of your data warehouse and can directly query any data there, and you can get started with it if you just have a SQL query or two. So that's enough talking about reverse ETL and kind of CDPs at a high level. What we wanted to cover next is actually inviting Ash from My Muscle Chef, who manages data and analytics there, to talk about how My Muscle Chef is actually using the data warehouse and Hightouch to power their whole marketing stack, where they're running tons of campaigns to hundreds of thousands, if not millions and more of users every single day. Cool. Ash, do you want to run us through a bit of what My Muscle Chef was trying to accomplish when they kind of looked towards the CDP and reverse ETL space, and some of the challenges that you were facing in the organization today?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think you covered a lot of those sort of challenges just now. Things around having all of our data is in BigQuery, which is our analytics warehouse, and so that's kind of where all the raw data goes. That's where we model it for actually getting the insights and analysis out of there. And in order to connect to other platforms, whether it's Facebook ads, Google ads, or in a CRM or marketing automation platform, it was either manual CSVs, which are not something that anyone really wants to do all of the time, but also otherwise it was creating different APIs, and so again, not super scalable, just takes up a lot of time and is quite sort of rigid in terms of if we need to make changes. And another thing that we kind of found a lot is if there are these sort of intermediary platforms, so from BigQuery into a CRM, and then going from there, getting pushed into advertising platforms, it meant that a lot of the time, if there was any issues, it was unclear as to what was actually going on. Just different platforms handle and process data differently. So yeah, it was a lot of manual work required to actually get our data into the places that we needed to activate against it. There were inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and so it was a very time-consuming and not fun sort of process for anything especially from the marketing side. If they needed audience to be updated, obviously CSVs are not the most up-to-date. It's out of date as soon as you've exported it. So we needed something that was going to make sure data freshness was up to the expectations of the marketing team, make sure everything was accurate, and also minimize that sort of manual work that my team had to do.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I think the thing that was most memorable when I first talked to you, Ash, about Hightouch was that you told me you're doing this all manually today. You were taking SQL queries, using a BI tool to export them to a CSV, transform it a bit in Excel, and then move it over to every marketing tool that the marketing team wanted to use, whether it's Facebook ads, Google ads, etc. And as soon as it's exported, it's already out of date. And that's really the kind of thing that we automate at Hightouch. If there's any sort of process around the company where you're taking a CSV and putting it in another system, you can think of Hightouch as a way to just do that at a really high scale. And that's actually the whole idea behind Reverse ETL, allowing you to take any sort of SQL queries or data in the warehouse and turn them the source of truth or the database that powers the rest of the systems around your company. Yeah, it would be interesting to hear a bit about the goal of building a customer data platform using, the data warehouse and Reverse ETL, but the goal of building a customer data platform at My Muscle Chef.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you again touched on earlier around CDP is like a really big buzzword in marketing circles at the moment. So there's been a number of times that's been raised and sort of discussed with our team. And for us, you're 100% right in terms of we want to maintain one source of truth, which is BigQuery, but then also be able to activate and utilize it in the same way that a CDP would kind of essentially allow us to. So having a consistent view of the customer based on their transactions, based on their activity on our website or in our app, using like that snowplow behavioral data, and being able to have a consistent view of all of these bits and pieces together that is then able to be accessed and used consistently across marketing or across like customer support, and to then help with personalization of content, but also for helping our support team more effectively respond to customer queries by having more information about those customers to address them quickly. The accuracy sort of piece, the fewer places we have to actually look for where there's issues. If something doesn't look quite right, if it's not showing up as expected, it's a lot easier when it is all from BigQuery. We know that's correct,
Totally makes sense. So we talked a bit about this earlier, but basically, with CDPs, the issue that companies like My Muscle Chef felt is that it wasn't. They try to do a lot of things, but they don't really focus on the best of breed solution. So with the data warehouse, you basically get more of a composable CDP by being able to take event data, object data that's flowing into the data warehouse via your existing solutions like Snowplow and Fivetran that you may have first implemented for analytics. And then with a tool like Hightouch on top, Hightouch just has to do really one thing, which is helping you sync that data to various different tools rather than doing event collection, transformation like dbt, and syncing all in one platform that lives in a totally isolated world compared to everything you're doing in data and analytics around the data warehouse. It would be great to hear a bit about how you're using Hightouch today at My Muscle Chef, Ash.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so as mentioned, BigQuery, literally all of our sort of analysis and modeling, everything kind of goes in there. And then we push using Hightouch. So those from the sort of final tables, push those audiences into Facebook audiences, Google ads. So then we can either, whether it's a re-engagement campaign, whether it's communicating new meals and offers, and actually engage with more personalized advertising and more efficient advertising as well, which is really good, really important for the marketing side of things, and then as well from that lifecycle marketing and comms in terms of being able to target emails, SMSs based on actions they've taken on the website and the app, or whether they've spoken to customer support, showing them relevant offers and products, and so just basically we know who these customers are, so we can give them actual relevant and timely communications, which is much less annoying for customers. They respond a lot better to things that are actually kind of relevant and of interest to them.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think another thing that's cool about reverse ETL is, unlike CDPs, which typically are just user data or event data, with reverse ETL you can really take any sort of data from the data warehouse and map it to any sort of other data inside of an answering tool. So I know you all are powering things like audience lists, catalogs, like things like product catalogs inside of solutions like Facebook that can be used for dynamic advertising, conversion events that can be used to actually optimize the ads and analyze how they're performing, all the way down to things like user profiles and inside of your lifecycle and communication tools. So it's kind of insane, but by nature, Hightouch doesn't really have to have a schema, which makes it support a lot more different destinations. We even have customers doing things like powering financial systems like NetSuite off the data warehouse using reverse ETL. Sweet. With that said, let's dive into a demo of what it would actually look like to create these sort of Google Ads and marketing tool syncs directly off the data warehouse using reverse ETL.
So we're in our Hightouch account now. So we've got Google BigQuery configured as our source here, which is our analytics database. Before we started working with Hightouch, we were having to manually set up and manage a bunch of APIs to get the customer data from BigQuery into other platforms like Facebook ads, Google ads, or like email marketing platforms. And so that's kind of time consuming and not the most scalable solution. So Hightouch really enabled us to unlock a lot of the value from our database. By easily updating these audiences, easily creating or changing them, and also making sure that everything is up to date and reliable. Everything's coming from our source of truth, and so we only need to maintain that data quality there, and not have to manage it in multiple different places if there was sort of an intermediary between it. So I'll show you one example of a sync that we've got set up. So this is a model in Hightouch, which is our A and B grade customers. So that's we've got a grading method that is run within BigQuery to grade customers, and so A and B grade are our high value customers, and the at risk piece means that it's been a certain period of time between since their last order. So what we are trying to do with this audience is target those customers with comms on Facebook ads in order to kind of win them back, re-engage them before they officially churn out. So as you can see, we've got this set up. The model set up as a SQL query, which defines the audience, and then it's synced straight through to Facebook ads. The really good thing about the Hightouch piece is they automatically hash the PII for us. So that's one less thing for my team to have to manage in BigQuery, or kind of in terms of getting that data ready. And Hightouch also doesn't store any of that data. So it's just kind of a conduit passing it through from BigQuery into Facebook ads. So from that kind of privacy perspective, it's really simple and kind of good, takes care of a lot of that stuff for us. And here you can sort of see as we're syncing from the model into Facebook audiences, the mapping is super easy just to drop down. So email and then choosing the field that it matches to from the Facebook end. Super easy. And then one of the biggest challenges that we typically face when you're syncing from anywhere into other platforms is data freshness. And so if there's, data isn't up to date, then you can kind of send people the wrong messaging, potentially things that are irrelevant. And that's kind of when ads or comms, whether it's email, SMS, Facebook, that gets a bit annoying. So if it's not relevant to those customers. So here in Hightouch, in the schedule sort of piece, we can set up the schedule for the model in the sync to run manually. So whether that's sort of like on a time schedule, hourly, daily, weekly, but also we use dbt for a lot of our transformation. So being able to connect Hightouch to dbt means that as soon as a job has run in dbt, that then triggers the sync. So as soon as we get that most up-to-date information in BigQuery, that's automatically pushed straight through into Facebook, so or wherever we're trying to send that to. So, and again, super simple. We just sort of it's a drop down. You choose the relevant job, and then you're all set. Another really useful feature for us is being able to set up Slack alerts. So we've got a dedicated channel for notifications of potential errors. So the Slack integration means that if there's an issue with any of the syncs, we get a notification, so we can then, we're notified in a timely manner, so we're able to address that as soon as possible, instead of assuming everything is just all right, and then finding out at some point that something wasn't working and we've been using incorrect data for a while. So that makes our job a lot easier. We don't have to, feel that sort of stress, that pressure to always be going in and checking things just to make sure that everything is okay. So that's a really big win for us. And I think from here, for my team, we use SQL for everything, BigQuery, dbt. So it's really easy for us to set up these audiences, but for marketing teams who don't use SQL, it's still, there's that kind of disconnect. They need to submit a ticket to us to create or update an audience based on their sort of needs, and then we do that, and then it kind of appears. But a really kind of big piece in terms of enabling marketing teams to be able to use data more effectively is giving them more sort of control and access to it. So there's a new feature in Hightouch, which we're in the process of setting up, called Audiences, which is essentially like a visual editor for building these models. So instead of having to create a query using SQL, marketing gets to use an interface that they're familiar with from other email marketing platforms or audience creation platforms, where it's drop downs, conditions to include or exclude people into their audience, and so it gives them more ability, more control, autonomy over how they can access and utilize that data without having to always use us as that intermediary between it. And that seems really simple, but the value is actually really massive, because my team only needs to manage our one source of truth, which is BigQuery, and then we know that if there are any issues, we can go in and troubleshoot, because we know that if any sort of problems are going to be either in BigQuery, or it'll be a simple kind of setup that configuration error. So we're able to then easily troubleshoot a lot of that sort of any kind of issues that arise, and we don't have to worry about inconsistencies that occur from sending data via multiple platforms in order to get to the final state. So if we were to send all of our data from BigQuery into a CDP or a CRM, and then from there you set conditions which then go into advertising platforms or email marketing platforms, there's quite often we've found that there are inconsistencies just based on the way that different platforms hold or handle data. So the potential points where there are issues, it just they just all add up. So it means troubleshooting or QAing things is quite a time-consuming process. So with this, it means that there's only either the data's wrong in BigQuery, or there's a configuration error within the audience in Hightouch. So there's only two places, and so it's super easy for our team to be able to manage and maintain data accuracy and freshness, really, in wherever we sort of need to use it.